Welcome to Jiva Yoga Live. I'm Hillary. Today we're going to take a look at some stretches for sore hips. We all know that your hips don't lie, and if they're telling you they need some love and attention, you need to give them some TLC. We're going to break down 5 basic yoga poses that will help you do just that. Let's take a look at some stretches for sore hips. We're gonna find some ease today, really loosen up wherever you're tight. But before we get started, I want you to make sure that you are nice and warmed up because we wanna have the blood flowing. A lot of times when we're experiencing soreness and inflammation, it's actually the result of a lack of oxygen flowing to those spaces. So go ahead and take a few sun salutations, maybe put on some music and do a little dance or do some mountain climbers, something to warm up before we get into this instruction. We're going to go through 5 basic yoga postures, and they can be modified to accommodate any level of practice. So if you're just starting out or you're really advanced, maybe you have a ton of flexibility, maybe you don't have any flexibility, wherever you are in your practice is going to be really good for helping those hips relieve some soreness. So our first pose we're going to come into is a simple runner's lunge. And to get into this pose, we can just come into a downward facing dog. Stretch out here, and then we'll just bring one leg in between the palms and lower the back knee down. Press into the front foot, press into the top of the back foot, and you can inhale, lift the arms up. We want to try to stay here for at least 5 breaths, and when you're in this posture, you want to make sure that your hips are nice and square. If your right leg is forward, you're bringing that right hip down. You're allowing the hips to sort of hug into the midline, but you're still keeping them nice and square. If you want to bring this posture a little deeper, you can bring the top of the back foot even further back, lunging even deeper, sinking the pelvis down into the mat and extending the tailbone in the opposite direction of the fingertips. So repeat this on both sides. You have the option to lift the back knee if you want. Just make sure that the hips are coming straight, square, to get the best stretch here. The next posture we're going to come into is a simple Malasana pose. So to come into this posture, we'll just start with the standing position. We want to bring the feet a little wider than hips width apart. You can point the toes out just a little bit, and then this is basically a squat pose. So we're just going to sink the hips down towards the mat, bringing the tailbone as close as we can towards the mat. Your heels may be coming up. We want to try to bring the heels down. If they're not coming down for you, if that's not in your range of motion, do not worry about it. Just put a little blanket, something underneath your heels to meet it so that you can really press through the energy. We're bringing the pelvis closer to the mat. We're going to bring the hands to the heart center. This is Anjali Mudra. And we're pressing the knees into the elbows, and we're pressing the elbows into the knees. We want to try to breathe here for 10 breaths. It looks really simple, but you may find this is actually quite a challenging pose to do, especially when you're sore, when you're tight in your hips. But it's really good because it's nice for rotating the external hips, stretching the groin. It's really helping you find a greater sense of range of motion here. So Malasana or garland pose, and also lift the sternum, lift the chest, keep the head high, and press into the elbows and press into the knees. And from here we can sit down onto the mat for bound angle pose, which I'm sure you're not unfamiliar with. You've probably been doing since you were on your carpet in preschool. You may have called it butterfly pose, that's fine. All we're gonna do is bring the feet together. We're gonna make sure both sit bones are flush against the floor, and we're gonna bring the knees wide. If it feels good, you can move the knees up and down. You may wanna take a stretch from side to side. Lengthening through the side might give you some relief. from the outside of the hips. You can adjust the feet further away from the body. You can bring them closer in. So kind of play around with that and find what's feeling the best for your body today, what's relieving the most soreness for you. And if you want, you can go even deeper into the stretch by reaching up and then folding forward over. You can bring the elbows to the outside of the knees to help press them down gently. And take a few breaths here. Again, you can still do the stretch, sitting all the way up, bound angle pose, really good hip opener. And from here, the next stretch we're gonna do is cow face pose. So to do this, we're just gonna cross one leg over the other. We'll bring, the heels are coming sort of to the outside of the hips. We wanna make sure that our hips are both flush against the floor, sit bones are both touching the ground. And the idea is that we're bringing the knees into alignment with the sternum. You may not be able to get quite as aligned as I am today, which is fine, but just make sure that that's kind of where the energy of the pose is going towards. So to do this pose, we just want to lift through the tailbone all the way up through the spine, and we're gonna bring the hands together behind the back, opening through the chest and rolling the shoulder blades down, and then we'll inhale and hinge from the hips, exhale, fold over. You can let the hands pull away from the body to really feel the stretch in those outer hips. You want to take at least 5 breaths here, maybe going a little longer if you're feeling that your body is warmed up and prepared. And then you want to come up, switch the legs, and repeat on the opposite side. The last pose we're going to look at is a really nice juicy hip opener. To do this, we want to come into a seated position. We're going to lower the body down, but we'll leave our knees bent, our feet flat on the ground. And with the right leg, we'll lift it and we'll cross the ankle over the left knee. Figure 4 pose. So you may feel that just doing this is enough of a stretch for you today, but if you want to go deeper, we're going to raise the left foot off of the ground, bring the hands behind the left thigh, and pull the left thigh gently in towards the chest. You can feel a really nice stretch in the outside of the right hip, in the outside of the right glute, and even along the side of the right leg, of the upper thigh. To get deeper into the stretch, you can lift the chest towards the knee and bring the knee towards the chest. You can press away from the right leg with the right arm. You can move the knee closer or further away from the left leg. There's a lot of options here. You want to just do what feels good for your body today. Just be careful that you're keeping the back of the body flush against the mat, okay? We don't want it coming off of the mat like this. Oof, that doesn't even feel good in my spine. So we're just keeping it nice and flush, opening the hips, opening the groin. You want to hold that for at least 5 deep breaths, maybe going longer for 10. And then when you're ready, just simply switch it over and repeat on the opposite side. This is a variation of chair pose, which is usually a standing pose, and it's really good for opening the hips, but when you're doing it in a standing position, it's also really good for strengthening, which is really important for the hips, because a lot of times when we're experiencing chronic soreness, it's actually coming from weakness and unstable muscles. So if you want to practice this pose standing, it could help with your strength, could help with your stamina, with your balance, and also with your flexibility. It's great all around for improving how you're feeling. You can also take this pose anytime you're at work, chair pose, you know, just simply cross the leg, one leg over the other, bend over, whether you're at the office or maybe you're on the subway. It's a great pose to take anytime. So those are 5 of the best stretches you can be doing to relieve some soreness in the hips. You can do them anytime. I recommend trying to do at least 1 or 2 of these a day, especially if you're experiencing chronic pain. The more consistently you are with doing this, the more benefits you're going to find. You're going to find that the more open you are, the less pain you're experiencing, and by having more flexibility, you're preventing yourself from future injuries. So pain is not the idea here. We really want to practice safe stretching. Make sure again that you're nice and warmed up before you're doing these stretches on your own and putting them in your own practice. And if you want to go a little deeper into the stretches, you can always take these into a yin practice. Would you like to dive deeper into today's sequence? Click the link in the description below. You can download the PDF with images and tips to help you get deeper into today's practice. Namaste.